Where's Robin?
I don't want to be a harbinger of doom.
He does.
But I haven't seen him for 2 days.
3. Now you come to mention it.
Oh, no. You don't think...
He's been sucked off. Lucky beggar.
Oh, you don't really think he's gone, do you?
What if he has? What if he has? Hold! No, there he is. 12 o'clock. Oh, goodness. Oh, dear. It's a relief.
Right, old scare.
For a moment there, I thought that he'd, Mary?
Oh.
Just been watching my mouse family. I had little babies. It's very nice. What?
Hello and welcome to Haunting Button House, a BBC Ghosts podcast. I am Luke and I am joined by Tash. Very professional intro this week after the abomination of last week, so
you had to redeem yourself.
Straight into it. How are you, Tash?
I'm alright, thanks, Luke. How are you?
I'm okay. What have you been up to? Nothing at all. Let's
DIY.
move on. Yeah, we've just
work and DIY
around the house. Yeah, that's it really. I went to see Alien this week, the new Alien film. I won't give a long review, but it was okay. And there we go.
What a glowing review.
Yeah, I mean, if people are interested, I could go in more detail, but I don't think anybody is. People are interested in ghosts and feedback to ghosts.
Feedback. So. Okay, so we've got some feedback, which is good. So, Caroline. Caroline says, I think you're right about the practical reason why Mary is very much separate from the others for most of the episode, being that she was unavailable for all the filming. I have heard some of the cast commenting that they were very grateful that Katie Wicks was able to give them half a series before Mary moved on, so that they could properly complete Mary's story arc. So, yeah, it's kind of what we discussed, isn't it? That she probably wasn't available. So
I do have some trivia notes
before
the start of this episode
related
to Katie Wicks's.
Okay. Yeah. Caroline also said, I do think the Sorry Song is a highlight of the whole series. Very horrible histories. Somewhere on YouTube you can see a version of this scene from Mike's point of view. I assume it was taken from the behind the scenes DVD extra. It's very funny to realise what his life is often like. He's a very patient man. Very patient.
That's the thing, isn't it? I can imagine it's just sitting there for like 2 minutes of nothing. You're like, I'm assuming something's
happening and I can't see it. Marianne said, I enjoyed this episode. Mike is really quite a lovely man and endless patience for his invisible roommates and Alison. The Sorry Song had me rolling. Being so not right will keep us up all night, I think it is. And the bit with Thomas wrapping off script, so well done. Just a lovely episode with lots of feels. I'd give it a 9, and for once we all agree. I think we gave it a 9, didn't we?
I think so, yeah. It's a strong series.
It is a very strong series, yeah. Nick said, love the Sorry Song, reminded me of Horrible Histories days when they all sang silly songs in that. Also loved Humphrey teaching Robin how to say apothecary. Find it highly amusing that Lawrence Rickard is essentially teaching himself to speak as he plays both parts. I never even picked up on that. It's so weird because I do genuinely forget that Robin and Humphrey are the same person, or the same actor.
Imagine how they film that as well. Obviously,
surely I always think, a film which is like it's all like this all the way through the film is the Lindsay Lohan version of The Parent Trap, where like she literally plays both parts. Like I definitely grew up thinking that Lindsay Lohan was a twin.
Two people,
But I always think, how do they film, like, when the other person's not there? How do they react? It's very clever, definitely very clever.
I think with the Lawrence Rickard thing, how they did an entire film with 2 Lindsay Lohans, I'm not sure.
No.
But the I think the Lawrence Rickard one, I reckon they probably had... they filmed one version, so they filmed his scenes as I was just going to say the caveman then.
Yeah,
it's Robin. With a stand-in, who does the lines to him as well, just so he knows what he's going to do. And then they just do the opposite and then just put them over one another.
But reacting to it is like... Do you know what I mean? And almost knowing how you're going to say a line before you've even said it, to know how the other character's going to react to what you've said.
Yeah. There's not really any behind the scenes sort of stuff, is there? I'm sure there is for series 1, but I've not seen any for the other series.
I've got to be honest, I don't look for it. I think when we watched it before, I probably watched little bits of it. And then once we had the idea to do the podcast, I quite like that other people tell us these little things in the feedback that we get. So I it's kind of on purpose, where I just don't look for things. I don't look too much into it and just look at it at face value, I suppose. But yeah, it's very, very interesting how they must have done that.
Maybe I need to do some more research on trivia. So I just get trivia notes sometimes and just do a quick Google, but maybe I need to look into more of the behind the scenes. Yeah. It's a bit late now, obviously.
Maybe when we do the book, we'll be able to recall things that we've
There's something I remember that's in the book that came from this episode. It's
we haven't got to this. Which episode?
This episode.
The one we're about to do.
We're about to do.
Well, why don't you tell us something else? So Jan says, love the sorry song, very clever. And Jan also says, thanks Luke and Tash for sharing your week with us. Very generous of you. So we don't do anything.
We're trying to skip past it as quickly as possible all the time, unless we've got something genuinely interesting
to say. So and then Alison, different Alison before you ask, Luke.
Okay.
Said, I love Thomas's rap, the attention-seeking, self-indulgent, eternal teenager of the group. Definitely, it's that's Thomas in a nutshell, really, isn't it?
Thomas is a teenager, through and through.
And then Alison also said, and this is a call out for any help because we weren't very helpful. I also wonder if anyone can help me. I was sure I remembered a scene. I remembered seeing a clip of the scene where Mike is doing his nuddy run back to the bathroom, and Humphrey's head, who can't see what's happening, says, "Is someone clapping?" I don't know if it was an outtake, but I've never found it again, and no one else remembers it. Possibly I'm going a little insane, and I've not seen it, and I did have a quick look. But I wonder if anyone can help Alison. If you have got a link to the clip, then send it to us.
We'll probably put it in, if we do get one, we'll put it into next week's podcast notes, just so you can find it. Yeah.
So you can find it, and we'll send it to you, Alison, if anyone does send it to us. So, so yeah, that's the feedback, I think, for this week. So should we get on with the episode?
This week we are looking at episode 4 of season 4, or series 4, entitled Gone Gone, directed by Simon Hind, written by Ben Wilbond. Do you know what I think it is that made me do that? Because it always puts the red squiggly line under
his name.
And I don't know why. That must trick me into thinking there's another eye there.
Yeah.
The original air date was...
You need to get over that.
I know.
You really do.
It's been months.
It's been
months.
a really long time.
Yeah. The original air date was the 14th of October 2022. So some trivia about this episode. So obviously, if you've watched the episode, this is Katie Wicks's final regular series appearance as Mary. She moved on to the afterlife. According to The Sun... Not a credible source, but that's all we've got. Katie Wicks left the show as Mary to focus on her busy schedule and an obligation, oblige her full slate of commitments. These commitments included a 9-episode arc as Barbara in Ted Lasso.
Ooh, I forgot she was in Ted Lasso.
Because she pops up as like she's like the accountant or something, isn't it? For
No, she's with Keely.
Keely's
She's like
business,
I don't think she's the accountant. I think she's just like office.
Something, yeah.
I forgot she was in Ted Lasso. I was trying to think, what? Yeah.
I mean, a most iconic role, I've got to say, is Carol Collins from Staff Let's Flats. Yeah. If you follow Carl Smith Bino's Instagram, he's been wearing a shirt recently with Carol Collins on it in that kind of... do you know that one where it's like Alison Hammond, Queen of Birmingham? Yeah. It's that kind of thing, but it's Carol Collins. So apparently you got it specially made and everything.
Amazing.
She was in Ted Lasso as Barbara. She did 11 episodes as Jules in British sitcom Big Boys.
I've seen that.
I've seen it advertised. It's got the guy from Derry Girls in it, but that's it. That's all I know. And the 2023 film Men Up, which I've not heard of.
Maybe I'll have to check those out.
Yeah.
Fine. They were better than Ghosts.
According to series co-creator Ben Wilbond on the Ghost podcast, we never intended for a character to leave, so it was very sad, the whole process. So I think basically this wasn't the intention, but
that's interesting that it wasn't the intention, because sorry, that was a cat incoming there. It's interesting that it wasn't their intention for anyone to leave, because I don't know, it's kind of like a natural progression that someone would move on. Yeah. But
it's interesting though, because it throws up, like, obviously this wasn't a planned episode, but it's something that they wrote because they were thrown a bit of a curveball. And, I mean, not to sort of spoil my thoughts on the episode, but they managed to write a really good episode about grief, for it. And it's like, all this comes from, just that somebody said, I can't do the series anymore, you know what I mean? So, it's, pretty interesting sort of way they sort of worked around it. So we start and we see the captain is giving basically a bird watching lesson to all of the ghosts. Kitty's a bit confused, as she was expecting this to be some kind of singing club, as he called it. He called it the Dawn Chorus Club, and he says no, just birds. Julian can't help but make a crude joke and asks if there will be any tits. To which he said he only joined to say that.
I thought it was interesting, the crossover. I've never really acknowledged it before, between Pat and the captain. Like that kind of outdoorsy, military, outdoorsy, kind of...
Because Scouts is kind of like military... I apologise to everybody who has been a Scout, but it's kind of like military light, and you don't actually... You do the kind of...
Yeah, I guess to a certain degree, I suppose. It's more about sort of surviving outside in nature, which I guess if you are,
That's what I mean. You do all that kind of stuff, but you don't do all the weapons and actually fighting stuff, I suppose.
Archery.
Archery, I suppose.
Just as Pat.
Yeah, that's true.
But I just thought it was interesting to sort of know. I've never really sort of acknowledged it before, is that sort of crossover between them two.
Fanny says that Robin needs to stop his sniggering, and then they realise that Robin isn't actually there. And this is when Thomas mentions that he hasn't actually seen Robin for 2 days. And I think the captain says 3 days he hasn't seen him for. And they start to wonder if he's gone, to which Mary says he's been sucked off. Lucky beggar, she says. Again.
I was a bit worried at this point when we obviously first watched this episode. I was like, did they throw a complete red herring that we think that it could be Mary and it's actually going to be Robin? Obviously.
But luckily he's just outside, and they all kind of rejoice that he's not actually gone. But no sooner than saying this, this kind of angelic light surrounds Mary, and she floats upwards and then off into the sky as all the ghosts are shocked about what's just happened.
I had to rewind it and watch it about 3 or 4 times just to take in the emotion of that.
It's quite understated. It's
very understated. I forgot that it even happened so early on.
Yeah,
I just was not...
mid-series as well. Like, it's like not like at the end. It's not like the final point to the series. It's just smack bang in the middle.
I can totally understand that it would be mid-series. Obviously, we've discussed like why Mary left why Katie Wicks left, but just for it to be just so quickly and like just no lead up to it, it just was like done.
It just happens right in the beginning of the episode. Yeah. I remember. So obviously we've watched this before, so this time it wasn't a shock. But I remember when we first watched it, we were like,
"No,
wait, has that just
she's
happened?
coming back."
Yeah, it was like, has that just happened?
Maybe it's a dream.
I think genuinely, like, if you're a fan of the show, it's pretty shocking that somebody just disappears and goes.
Definitely.
Which is like kind of the point for it. The entire episode is that none of them can really handle that she's gone.
I will say though, she looked very happy.
She did.
She looked like she was ready to go.
It's been a long time coming, basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, she literally always says every time "lucky beggar," so she's been waiting for it to happen, basically. Somebody's not clued in though. Robin enters and he's talking about what he was doing. He was looking after his mouse family who were all having babies, and he's really confused as to why everyone's so quiet. And they mention what's happened, that Mary's gone. Robin shrugs and says, "Oh, do you want to see some mice babies?" And that's the beginning of the episode. We find out more about it later, but I like Robin's complete nonchalant attitude to this. He's just like, and when he explains why later, it makes a lot of sense. But here, you just think, your friend's gone, you know what I mean? Like, so it's interesting, but yeah, that's the beginning. Just before the intro, anyway. We come back and we see that the ghosts have all basically told Alison what's happened, and she just looks confused and asks, "Has she just gone?" And they can't really explain it either. Thomas, or all of the ghosts, but mainly Thomas, says it. He wonders why her and why now and what it all means. Mike walks in, not knowing the mood.
Does not get the vibe.
Singing a song about a party. To which he says, "Who died?" Laughs and then realises, oh, something serious. Like, no, who died? Alison.
Do we consider her to have died?
I mean, they kind of say later that she's not died. But her afterlife. Her life's not finished, but her afterlife's finished, is what they say. So yeah, I don't know. Like, I guess the assumption, because she's floated up, is she's gone to some Christian heaven. You know what I mean? Like that version of it, or like something like that. But yeah, we don't know. Which is kind of the same when anybody dies, I suppose. But in this case, it's a ghost. You know what I mean? So Alison explains to Mike what's happened. Mike initially seems happy because he says, "Oh, is that the one who spied on me in the bathroom?" And has to kind of go, "Oh, it is quite sad."
I like how the ghosts keep saying "sucked off," but Alison's like moved on.
Yeah. I think
I feel her.
You're Alison, in this situation. Pat says she's always talked about it, and it's what she really wanted, basically. But Kitty's really upset, runs away, and Julian's just not impressed at all at Kitty's attitude. And he's like, "Oh, it's going to be one of those days." And you can tell that he's got this anger. And I think I quite like this, that it starts sowing the seeds for all of the ghosts and how they deal with this, which is, when they go over them, they're all common signs of grief, you know what I mean? So the captain immediately then starts asking how he can help this birthday party. We find out it's an 86th birthday party for two people called Ethel and Biddy. And the captain just springs into action. He's like, "Can I help? What can I do?" And just wants to get busy and not get busy. He wants to stay busy and take his mind off things, basically, which you hear a lot of people say as well. So they mention, or Mike mentions about this birthday party. He says there's going to be lots of cake, tea, and dancing. He says old ladies love him, and he says, and Robin.
I can imagine that as well.
Yeah. He's that kind of like vibe, I suppose, about him. And Robin is really excited that there's going to be a party again. Seems completely uninterested that one of the ghosts has just gone.
Yeah.
Pat decides he's going to go to talk to Kitty about this, and he tells her not to cry. Says, I think he tries to do his best because he realizes that telling her what has actually happened is not going to help her. So he tells her that she's just on another level and that she's watching over them.
A ghost,
yeah, which is what Kitty thinks she's become. And she starts to ask Pat some more questions. And this is, I think, where he realises he's made a mistake of not just being honest, because now he's going to have to come up with this elaborate story of where she is. When she asks how long she's going to be a ghost. It's difficult to say. He quickly replies 3 months, as now he's just like, let's just fill in the gaps of information. This is what I was talking about with the book as well. I know there's a guide to all the different layers of being a ghost. I think there's 10 layers or something like that.
Because you did have a flick through the book, didn't you, when you first bought it?
Yeah, that was the one that jumped out. There was that, and there was some stuff about Julian in like a kind of tabloidy news kind of thing. But it literally goes through kind of like... it's kind of like Snakes and Ladders or something. It's like goes through all the different layers of where they are. So, yeah, that's quite fun. We see a car pull up, and Toby and his wife... We don't really get his wife's name, I don't think.
I didn't even get the guy was called Toby.
He says it once,
and
really? I wrote it down. Yeah.
Fair enough.
So, and they pull up, and he asks where the birthday girls are, as 2 little children run up to him. And Mike quickly realises that Ethel and Biddy are these two small kids, basically. Mike's a bit panicked at this, and he says that they definitely said it was an 86 birthday party, and when they go back and listen to the tape, it's an 8 and 6. Tape.
Voicemail.
Voicemail. It used to be on a tape. So yeah, he realises he might have made a bit of a boo-boo here, especially with his decor and everything around this. Mike says that they need to cancel it, but Alison convinces him, they can handle this. She'll handle the kids, as Mike says he's no good with kids. He said ask his sister.
She says everyone loses a toddler in the big Tesco.
I love when TV shows do this and they just drop a story and you're like, I want to know about that story, but they'll never ever come back to it. So yeah, Alison says she'll handle the kids if he handles the logistics, and he's like, okay, we'll do that. We go back to Kitty, who is still talking to Pat.
It's so good to know she'll be here, Pat. I still want to tell her so much.
I know, and you can.
But only for 3 months, you said.
Huh? Oh, yes, I did, didn't I?
And after that, she'll be gone.
Oh, no, because there's another layer.
Another layer?
Mm-hmm.
But how'll she get there?
She must pass through a gate.
A gate?
Yeah. The gate of, Herbert. The gate of Herbert.
But what if she can't find the gate?
Oh, but she will. For she is shown the way by a kindly man, a wizard with hair, a long silvery beard.
What's his name?
Larson. Yeah, Wizard Larson. And you can't miss him because of his big old dragon tattoo.
How exciting. And what happens on the 3rd layer?
Oh, nothing much, really. Unless you like unicorns.
I like the joke here that I completely missed the first time I watched it, but the second time it clicked, that he's getting all of his information because he's in the library. He's just looking at book spines and just getting from there. So I think he says that she has to go through a gate of Herbert, and sees an author title Herbert. And then the second part, we don't see it obviously, but he says that they meet a wizard called Larson with a dragon tattoo. And that's because there's that girl with the dragon tattoos written by someone like Stieg Larsson or something like that.
Okay.
I completely missed it the first time, but this time I was like, that's quite good. Especially later on as well. There's some more, but I didn't really get the references to the other books there. I'm sure somebody out there has probably got all that. We see Alison find Thomas in the bathroom, just sat in the bath. He's very upset at all this.
It's an odd place to sit.
Yeah, quite an odd place.
Although comfortable.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time I sat just in the bath, though. You know what I mean? Like, he's initially we see that it's he seems upset about Mary, but when he starts to speak to Alison, we find out that he's basically made it all about himself, and he's worried that he's going to be taken when he's got so much left to give.
So selfish.
It's that thing of like you hear people do this,
Yeah.
like they start thinking, oh God, thinking about their own mortality. But in this case, he's already dead. He shouldn't need to be worrying about this. But again, there's this sort of second place that they head off to. He tells Alison that she needs to remarry if anything were to happen to him. To which she kind of reminds him that she's already married to Mike, so doesn't have to worry about that. Mike shows the two parents the room where the birthday party is going to be happening in, and the mom comments that there's a lot of china for an 8 and 6 birthday party, and some quick thinking from Alison says that it's because it's a Mad Hatter's tea party. Now, good idea. I thought this was quite quick-witted. Julian suggests that in this kids' party they need to have an adults-only area, to which he suggests putting go-go juice in something basically as
What is go-go juice?
alcohol, I think.
Oh, is that it?
yeah.
I mean, I figured it was,
Yeah.
but I just wondered if it was a specific type of alcohol.
I've heard people describe it as something. I want to say gin, but I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, if you find out. But Alison uses this again. Another sort of idea comes from this, as she said that they're going to put the kids' juice in the teapots to drink. Julian gets a bit angry at this because he says that his ideas are always getting stolen, and he leaves. He starts mentioning that it was him that actually came up with the name for Operation Desert Storm when we invaded Iraq. He said that it was stolen by some Burke who worked at the Treasury, who met in the pub. I Googled everything related to this to try and figure out
who it was.
Yeah, but I couldn't find anything because it kept saying that the person who named it was an American politician. I'm like, maybe it was him. I don't know. So yeah, if anybody does know, let us know. Alison and Mike quickly realise they have food for an 86 birthday party as well. As Mike says he's got it covered, and then we hard cut to them just looking at vol-au-vents, blinis, and wine, which not going to go well for a kids' party. I've got to say this now, I'm going to make a confession. I've been to so many parties, family parties, I have no idea what a vol-au-vent is. What is it?
It's like, well, my understanding is it's like a pastry case with some mushed up crap in it.
It's like a Cornish pasty then, basically.
No, it's tiny.
Okay.
It's like a...
Sorry, this is a complete derailment, but I just
should have
looked at
asked me this before we started.
I just realised that like I've been to so many parties that like have vol-au-vents.
So you have like, it's like they're like normally circular, and then they've got a hole in them, and then like they put stuff in them, like that one's prawn.
Okay,
cocktail.
right. Okay.
Vol-au-vents.
Vol-au-vent. Okay, is it like puff pastry or?
Yeah, kind of, I
okay.
guess.
Interesting.
Pastry situation is what it is.
Pastry situation. Okay. Anyway, they mention that they can't give wine to kids. As Pat says, even I know that you can't give wine to kids. It says unless you live in France. So I don't know. It feels like a very Little Englander kind of view on France and the French. Mike goes to get some more kids party food, which Pat says beige. That's all you need. He says basically the same colour as my outfit. and then says the only difference is jelly. He says jelly.
Can't have a party without jelly.
He says can be as bright as you like. Ideally, not a colour found in nature. So there you go. So what colour would that be? Do you reckon blue? Maybe.
Yeah.
Green?
Although red. When I think of jelly, I think of red jelly.
Red jelly.
Strawberry, raspberry.
Yeah. I mean, what colour isn't found in nature? You know what I mean?
I know. Yeah. I was just about to say that.
I get the point. Like blue is apparently blue is not a colour you're meant to eat because it's traditionally poisonous. But yeah. Anyway, that's again sidetracked here. Alison thanks Pat for talking to Katie and says it's just good that you've not given her any false hope. And Pat sort of is like, after the tall tale he's given her. The captain is outside trying to just direct traffic, but realising no one can see him. What was you going to say?
No, I wasn't going to say anything. I'm just laughing, thinking about him when he's like, over here. Over here.
I like as well his final stop where the car just drives through him and he's like, yep, that'll do. Inside we see Fanny has kind of gone up to the TV room and has nodded off. But she wakes up and realises that Loose Women is the next programme on. And so she starts to say, oh, Mary, I want to watch this. Starts calling for Mary. And then quickly realises that Mary's not there. Which is quite sad, actually. And she gets quite upset about it. But it's that kind of realisation that she's not there. Back in the party, we see the kids all dancing to the music, as is Robin in the middle of them all. I imagine, obviously, in the programme, we know that the kids can't see Robin. How fun must have this been as a kid actually filming it? Where you just dance and there's going to be a caveman dancing.
Just pretend you can't see him.
Yeah, exactly. The mother wants to know when the food is coming out, and Mike just arrives in the nick of time with his I want to say Sainsbury's bags, but it's obviously BBC, so we can't say exactly which supermarket bags.
Other supermarkets are available.
Alison comments. The dad, Toby, comments on the noise and says forgets how noisy kids can be. And the mom says that she prefers to think of it as they're full of life. Which Alison then goes on to a really bleak speech about how precious life is, which, understandable after what's happened, very dark when you're at an 8 and 6 year old's birthday.
And also you can't explain it, because normally you could say, sorry, my friend passed away this morning, or something to that effect, but you can't say my ghost friend moved on. Because no one is going to believe her.
It's a very, very lonely situation.
Definitely.
She mentioned she need to grab life with both hands. It can be snatched away so quickly. And I put a bit of a downer for a kid's party. Julian starts to complain about a teapot being out of place. And starts to push it, and this eventually leads to the cup breaking. But there's other stuff that happens at this point, so all the ghosts appear and basically start harassing Alison. Thomas wants to write some more poems, but he needs Alison's help. The captain comes in and says that all of his tasks are done. He needs another task. He can't be not busy. Julian breaks a cup, which upsets all the kids, and then Fanny arrives, and this is when it starts dawning on them exactly what's happened, that Mary is actually gone. And Alison says that they need to gather all of the ghosts and tells the captain to gather them all in the library. She tells Mike to take over, as the ghosts and her are all struggling with this. And Mike is nervous, but he says he'll take over, he'll do this. He knows that it's a heavy situation she has to deal with. And this is when Toby comes over and asks Mike if he's booked an entertainer for the evening. And he remembers that he definitely booked an entertainer, but this entertainer is way more appropriate for an 86th birthday. I noted this is the man from Benidorm. I can't remember if he's been in anything else, but I remember he was like the... he's like the mayor. The mayor of Benidorm in the TV show Benidorm.
Not actual Benidorm. Yeah. And then he comes back for a few episodes.
Yeah, he's in a load of stuff, I think, but this is just what I remember him from. But yeah, so this guy is very kind of like your crooner, crooner singer type of entertainer.
Frank Sinatra.
Yeah, that's his like bread and butter.
And an American as well.
Well, he puts on an American accent, yeah. And as that completely breaks as he walks in there and realises it's a kids' party, Mike manages to convince him to stay with the offer of a buffet and more money. Although he admits he was sold at the buffet, but so he said he'll do.
We don't get his name, I don't think.
We don't.
I went back to try and listen if we got his name when he knocked on the door, but
I just noted him as the entertainer.
The entertainer.
Yeah. Alison is in the library and says, "We need to talk about the elephant in the room." To which Robin spins around and panics.
Do you think Robin would have seen an elephant?
Possibly. Definitely a mammoth. And I reckon they just explain it's like a mammoth but with no hair. Be like, okay, I think I can figure out what that's like. So they Robin leaves because he's not really interested in this at this point, and Alison says that they need to all come to terms with the end of Mary's afterlife. And Kitty says, "Don't worry, I've got it." She's able to soothe their worries as she goes on to explain that Mary's watching over them from the second layer, and that the wise wizard Larson will soon escort her to the gates of Herbert, where the unicorns await. As they all look around, and everybody just shrugs. This feels like a commentary on something, you know what I mean?
I love how confident she is as well. That is exactly what's happened. There's no question.
Don't worry about it. She's just she's in the second layer. Alison suggests that maybe they need a memorial for Mary. Thomas can write the eulogy. Fanny says that they should all wear black. Particularly, they should wear crepe for 2 years, at least, she says, while they're in the period of mourning. We can kind of overhear her talking later on about how everything needs to be sort of in mourning. The captain says that they're going to need a lot of guns for the salute. Kitty starts chanting for the unicorns while this is going on. Again, I really like this, that you get these different types of grief, like in this period. So, like, the captain is trying to busy himself. Julian's angry and just fussing over like really insignificant things. And Fanny is like in full on, we need to plan a funeral and mourning and all this stuff. And Alison just leaves at this point because she realises they're all talking over one another, a typical ghost sort of situation. As we cut to the entertainer giving a rendition of Downtown by Petunia Clark. The parents seem unimpressed at this.
It's the hip thrusts that I think is incredibly inappropriate for children. You'd think he'd read the room.
I like how he tries to get the kids involved and says, sing it back, and one person just goes, Downtown. He doesn't know any Lady Gaga as well, he mentions, so, he's not really helpful. Mike realises this is absolutely pitiful and decides he needs to muck in, basically. We see him go into the kitchen and sort of mix up this concoction, and we also see him go to a wardrobe.
When you say concoction, it sounds like he's trying to make that potion again to make him see the ghost.
See the ghost. No, we do...
He's sprucing up the cake, I think, is what he's doing.
Basically, yeah. And we see him also making an outfit of some kind. Kitty continues asking Pat at this point what happens next after this next layer, and Pat gives in and says that there's only a certain number of layers, and eventually she'll not be able to get back to us. But he mentions that she's at peace at this point. Again, I wrote note here. There's definitely more book references here. I think he mentions that there's one of the layers has got somebody called Tolstoy in, which is like, is that the guy who wrote War and Peace? I think.
We're not very
No,
cultured.
I'm testing the limits of my own knowledge here. So we see Alison. The Kitty at this point has to come to terms with, eventually there's going to be a point where Mary is gone. We see Alison drawing a picture of Mary, and Thomas walks in and says that he has written his eulogy and asks Alison if she can go through it with him. So he starts his eulogy, and we basically realise at this point that he's made it all about himself, about when he got
Thomas.
when he got shot, and Mary was there. Basically, he apologised and says he didn't know what to do. How can he summarise this? And then he realises he knows what to do, but he needs Alison's help with this. The entertainer ends his set and gets some scattered applause out of politeness, I think, more than anything. And then as this finishes, Mike gives an intro. Well, he does this kind of intro over the mic, basically saying that I can't even remember what he actually says in this.
No, all I put is, who likes sweets?
That's it, yeah. Who likes sweets and fireworks? As he comes in dressed as the Mad Hatter with both.
He looks great, to be fair, considering he's just made that outfit. It's
not bad.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
I wonder who the top hat belonged to. That's what I was trying to.
That's a good question. Maybe it's one of the other ghosts that somebody mentions later on. The ghosts and Alison all meet outside for Mary's memorial.
Thank you all for coming. I realise that today we've all been running away from the one thing that unites us all. The one thing that I think we've all been feeling. Grief. I know we all have different ideas about what we should do, but I thought we should take some time to remember Mary. Thomas was going to say a few words.
I thought that words could help us make sense of all this, but I was wrong. So instead, I've asked Alison to gather some items to help us remember Mary.
And all.
Our loose women. Photograph of Michael.
Yes, well, she was very fond.
She fancied him.
Fancied him. I hope you like the basket. I made it last year, according to Mary's instructions.
5 potatoes high.
5 potatoes high. I thought it best not to have a cremation.
Yes.
But we could bury this beneath the tree, and we could come and remember her, or pray, or whatever it is you believe in.
Well, thank you, Alison. I shall say a prayer for Mary. And you don't have to wear black, by the way.
Thank you.
Doesn't suit you.
Fine.
Good. Well, lots to do, so,
Captain, it's okay. You don't have to be busy anymore. I understand. I mean, we all do.
Yes, but if I stop, then...
I know. It's okay. And Julian.
You know, today reminds me of when Maggie's cat died. She was so angry we had to hide the nuclear launch codes. I'm not angry with you lot.
It's a perfectly normal reaction, Julian.
Hey, what you doing, long faces? The party's getting real good in there.
Robin, what's wrong with you, actually? I mean, are you not affected by this at all?
I've been around a long time. Like a really long time. I've seen this happen so much. Can't do this every time. The pain, I deal with it my own way.
Perhaps we could have a moment's silence for Mary.
You know, I think Mary would want us to have some fun too. Eh?
That was quite a long quote that we used here, but I think it's needed. I don't think you can sum that up.
No, and you know how my notes and recaps go. I'll just be like, oh, and then basket, and then it's probably better to
I think
just
it was worth taking that time. I think it's the captain that gets me.
It's how like I like that bit where she tells him that he doesn't have to keep doing things.
Yeah, definitely.
And he doesn't know how to reckon with
kind
that.
of breaks
Yeah.
that just so slightly. Yeah, it's really emotional.
But yeah, a lot to unpack in that sort of bit as well. I like the reference to Maggie's cat dying and having to hide the nuclear launch codes from Maggie. One thing that I thought about this while I was watching it back is obviously we think that Robin is quite uncaring about this, and he kind of says it's because he's been around such a long time, and it's like it's an experience that literally no person on earth can understand. Like some people live till they're like 100, and I imagine that's, you see lose a lot of people in that amount of time. Imagine if you lived for like 12,000 years. You know what I mean? Like the amount of people I can imagine you do become a little shut off from it. You know what I mean? And obviously he's not.
I get the point that you're trying to make, but I do think that. I think I think you're wrong. I think I can remember. So like my nan, who I was really close to, she passed away at age of 90, which is pretty old. And she definitely had like heartbreak like throughout her life. Like she lost her son, she lost like a parent, she lost her husband. Like, she had a foster brother as well. Like she definitely had like a lot of grief that she dealt with, and I do feel like by the end, like when people who like she like interacted with in later in life, say her friends, were passing away, like she was just like, well, that's life, and it's going to happen to me one day. And I definitely feel that she had that sort of mentality, very similar to Robin. Obviously, we didn't discuss it, and she didn't put it quite so eloquently as Robin did. But I definitely feel that she sort of felt that way, and I think a lot of older people would, especially when you get to similar as you say. But I think someone Robin's age, if you like. That's but I still think even in a lifetime, like, someone who lived into the age of 90 would kind of, like, okay, like, this is just what happens, because for 90 years,
but that's what I mean. Like, even if you've started to feel like that when you're 90, imagine if you were you were like thousands of years old. It'd be like,
you're gonna be like, oh god, another one.
Basically, you become probably so like callous to it. Like, not callous, because obviously we see that he's not, but he does like care.
And I think he had a deep connection with Mary as well. I think they really got on, and he probably does miss her, but yeah, it's very interesting.
Because it's just a strange sort of thing to sort of come from this. But obviously they all have a minute's silence, which is rudely interrupted by Superman battles, which is quite I don't know if it's an inappropriate song for a funeral, or if it's like, sounds like that'd be pretty good, to be fair. You know what I mean? Like it reminds me of like an Inside Number 9 episode or something like that. That would, you know what I mean? Like that kind of. Anyway, yeah.
Well, that goes from like, from like crying to being upset to like laughing.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
It's that complete change of emotion. That's it's hard hitting. It's really hard hitting.
I think it's because they're like so extreme emotions, and they like laughter and like crying is like so they're hard to sort of. They're easy to sort of slip into, if you know what I mean? Like,
definitely.
Anyway, they all go back inside because they realise that Mary would have wanted them to celebrate and have a bit of a party. And they go back into your favourite song, Gangnam Style by Psy.
I hate that song so much. Do not say that is my... I don't want anyone to think that is my favourite song because I hate it.
I knew that would annoy you.
I'm going to say I hate any song where there is a specified dance.
What about the Macarena?
Not a fan. It's
Not a
okay.
fan.
I
What
can deal with the
about
Macarena.
Cha-Cha Slide?
Hate it.
Cha-Cha. I'm not a big fan of Cha-Cha Slide.
Don't force me to dance. I have my own style.
Freeform. What's that one where the woman's like doing it? What's the freeform style dance?
Yes, that is...
Yeah.
I do not like to be told what to do in dancing.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm very passionate about that, actually.
Which is mad because you like bands and stuff like that and marching. That's basically that, isn't it? You know what I mean? Like.
No.
It's being told.
Do you mean a brass band?
Yeah, like do you know when they left at like march and like
yeah,
do, like...
that's different. That's very different.
They're being told what to do.
Yes, I understand, but not to like slide to the left, slide to the right, and crisscross, aren't they?
No, imagine. Anyway, so we find out they're all playing musical statues to Psy, and the ghosts win because obviously no one can see them move.
Absolutely.
Alison thanks Mike for covering for her when she had to go out, and she says that she loves him. She realizes that she doesn't say this enough to him, and this is when she realizes that they haven't replaced the cake. It still says happy 86th birthday. Mike says, don't worry, he's got it covered. And as we go over, we see that it's been cut in half, and basically the half that's where it's been sliced is just covered in M&Ms.
Really good idea, actually.
I thought it was a good idea, yeah.
Pretty innovative.
Yes, yeah. So this was the concoction that he was making. The ghosts all... so this is after the party is finished. The ghosts are going outside and they realise that they haven't actually seen Humphrey.
I was thinking that we hadn't seen Humphrey all episode.
I think this is on purpose, isn't it? To like try and make you think, oh no, is there another one?
Yeah.
So, but he's not. He's outside. His head's outside. He's been on guard. And the captain says that he'll break the news to him, which is probably better than Kitty telling him.
And now she's with the unicorns.
Yeah, exactly. And Robin shows everybody how he copes with this. He says that he finds a star, as that's where he thinks they all go eventually, which is interesting. Obviously, he's very pre-Christianity. You know what I mean? He just has to come up with a reason for why all this happens. So, and he starts listing some names as he points to the sky. He says Annie, which obviously we know, Clarence, Godric, Elizabeth, William, which he sort of laughs about and says that they've all got a star. Now, what era do you think these ghosts are from?
What do you mean?
The individual era. So obviously these are all ghosts that have been here.
Yeah.
What era do you think they come from?
Apart from Annie,
yeah,
I'm going to say that they're all
Tudor, I'd say.
Yeah, because they have to be, because maybe none of the other ghosts have... Although they don't say.
Humphrey's the oldest ghost other than Robin,
yeah.
So it has to be in between. I've worked it. I've done some reading. I reckon the only one I'm not sure about. So Godric, 100% is Anglo-Saxon.
Okay.
Elizabeth, possibly a Tudor as well. Before William, I reckon is like a Norman. Or something like that. It's kind of Norman sounding name, or at least in that era, like 1100s, 1200s, whatever. Oh, they play ghosts as well. They'd be the oldest ghosts there. So, but they don't talk to anybody, do they? So
no, we haven't seen them
in a while. Yeah. The only one I have no idea on is Clarence. I'm just going to say a Roman, just because I can't think of anything else. But yeah, any other ideas? You reckon?
No. You're better at that than I am.
Everybody, get in touch. What do you think these ghosts are?
Maybe they're mentioned somewhere and we've missed it.
It's probably in the book.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they decide that they need to pick a star for Mary. Pat. It's Matt. Pat picks a star, and Robin immediately points out that's the International Space Station, which I think is hilarious that Robin points that out to him. And Robin decides he's going to pick a star, and he finds one that's got a bit of a twinkle, because that's Mary. Yeah. And that's the end of the episode, so what do you think?
Difficult episode.
Yeah.
I think I was looking forward to / dreading this episode. It's brilliant. Like, it's really well done. Completely. Yeah, I don't really know what to say apart from that it was just really good.
Yeah.
I think it just sort of highlights, as you've said, like the different stages of grief. I don't think I've mentioned it previously, like in the podcast, but obviously to you, maybe not obviously to other listeners. But I lost my dad last year, and it was his first anniversary earlier this year. So this kind of, the podcast has always been kind of like maybe something to take our mind off things. And only we could pick a podcast or a TV show to review about death and grief and ghosts. But you know, it's kind of helped. Yeah. So I think this episode definitely hit hard. And it's you know, each of the ghosts that have that, like the anger, the wanting to keep busy, you know, even Kitty, like wanting to be like, well, they're not gone, where are they, like I need to know, like where is all like stages that I've been through in the last sort of 12 months. So very, very hard hitting episode this one was. And I couldn't give it anything other than a 10. I'm very sad to lose Mary. It's sad, but I guess in a way I'm kind of glad that like they were able to sort of do this episode as well, because it kind of, I know we said before, like that they had said that they never sort of envisaged that like one of the ghosts would move on. But I'm really pleased that, although not pleased that Mary left, but pleased that they were able to explore that. Because I think it's important, and it's an important part of their journey as well. So it's, I think as well, it's very delicately handled. It's not in your face about this episode we're gonna teach you about grief. It's just delicate and nice and easy to digest, which I think is what Ghosts, the TV show, does really well. It's
I think as well, because like it's kind of like a soft, this sounds a weird way of saying it, it's a soft death. You know what I mean? Like, it's not somebody's actually died and she's already dead, she's now moved on, and we see her move on and off. So it's like, well, it's got to be a positive thing. It's sad, but it's a positive thing. So it's less hot, as she said, it's less hard hitting. It's still an entire episode. It's weird that this is a program all about ghosts, and this is probably the first one that's dealt with grief of like somebody leaving.
I definitely think it's been sort of touched on, because it's kind of like, I'm just trying to think of an example, to be honest, but I know that we have talked, like they have sort of discussed grief like previously, and how can you not discuss grief when the TV show is about ghosts? Because ultimately you can't have a ghost without death.
Exactly.
So it's just,
I suppose with ghosts we're always seeing the death from their perspective, weirdly, you know what I mean? Like, whereas,
which you don't ever get to see.
So it's more personal, and a lot of the times angry or frustrated or something. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so you get the immediate, I'm angry that this has happened. Whereas with every like death in life, in real life, it's you observing. You know what I mean? Like, where it's not the person. So it's crazy how a TV show like Ghosts has so much like heart and you're pulling out like these very real sort of things that happen in it. So I have to give it credit for that. Really great episode. I don't know if I expressed how much, but I was absolutely stunned that Mary had gone. Like when I first watched this, like
I remember,
I couldn't believe that they actually got rid of one of the ghosts. Like you can understand, like
I think at the time we kind of acknowledged that probably Katie Wicks was going because she was doing other stuff.
I think,
especially because we watched things like
Had
Ted
we watched
Lasso.
Ted Lasso at the time? Like, had we seen her in it? Or I couldn't remember.
No, I don't think so. I think it was after. And then when we watched Ted Lasso, this is probably why we don't link it to ghosts. I think when we watched Ted Lasso, and we were like, it's Mary!
Yeah,
and then we were like, oh, okay, so that's probably why she left.
Yeah, exactly,
I think that's sort of, how we kind of linked the things together.
But yeah, like I said, I like this sort of central story of just people coping with grief, but they don't have to actually deal with somebody dying. It's just a really great idea for a situation that they didn't see themselves in, which is funny because that's literally everybody's experience ever. But it just has this real poignance to it. So yeah, really, really good episode. I'm not giving it a 10.
Okay.
But I'm going to give it a 9. It's definitely up there.
Yeah.
And this series, is, like, as a whole, I think, apart from the first episode, which I didn't like that much, everything else other than that has been pretty cracking.
I guess my 10 is... I mean, ultimately, everything we ever do is is influenced by your previous experiences and how you enjoy things. But I'd say that my 10 is probably because... of the reasons that I said like before, but and how it just feels like I've got that deeper connection. And I mean, I don't want to keep going on about it, but like when I first watched this episode, like the very first time, like back in 2022, I had no idea. I had no idea we'd be doing a podcast about it, and I also had no idea that that my dad would pass in the months following. So it's I've watched it from two different sides, I suppose.
Yeah. The IMDb score, sorry to go into something very... IMDb gave it an 8.5 from 421 votes.
Is that slightly up from the last episode?
I think so.
Yeah, because I'm sure we commented how low IMDb was in the last episode.
So the last episode, hardest word, got an 8. So yeah, it is up. So yeah, half a point up on this one.
Oh, is that all?
Yeah, 0.5, sorry.
Ghost Stories with Luke and Tash.
So this week I'm taking a different approach. So I'm not sure if I've mentioned this book before. I might have done. I can't remember. But there's a book that my mum had, or mum has, and it's called The Children That Time Forgot. And I can't remember who the author is. Peter and Mary Harrison, and it was first published in 1983.
Okay.
So this book is so this couple, they sort of gathered. So it's real stories about children who sort of experience or their experiences of ghosts, reincarnation, and stuff like that. So I did sort of have got the sort of the first part of the book, but maybe if anyone's interested, they can go and read because it's quite long. But it kind of sort of talks about how children, like, as they're even if we've kind of discussed in the podcast before how like children and animals are like more susceptible to picking up. Sorry, the cat is just like
Shell's picking up a vibe right now.
Just picking up a vibe. How they're more susceptible to like picking up sort of different things that maybe adults don't. And it just sort of acknowledged that even like as the time a child learns to speak coherently, that the memories that they have of these experiences have already started to diminish. So it's definitely worth having a look. But I've picked out one of the sort of stories. Mainly picked out this story, not because it's the best one, but because it was the shortest.
Okay, yeah.
So they are quite long, but the book is small and it's got small writing, so please bear with me. But the one that I've chosen is about a boy who remembers being his own grandfather.
Right, okay.
But I did pick out this one as well. It sort of jumped out at me because I have kind of maybe I've mentioned this before as well, but my mum tells me that when I was younger, I used to say that Charlie Chalk, who was a clown, I think, like kind of think Wacky Warehouse.
Oh, okay.
But there used to be it called Charlie Chalks.
Yeah.
And he was a clown and he always used to have his sleeves rolled up. And I used to tell my mum that at night Charlie Chalk would come and sit at the end of my bed and talk to me.
What Wacky Warehouse for Americans is kind of like a Chuck E. Cheese.
Okay.
Kind
so
of.
Chuck E. Cheese. I've lost my train of thought.
Sorry. Charlie Chalk was that.
Charlie Chalk used to come and sit at the end of bed, and they sort of made the connection that my granddad was a publican, so had like pubs, always used to have his sleeves rolled up, and Charlie Chalk always used to have his sleeves rolled up and wear braces and high trousers. So they kind of made that connection. I don't know. I don't know if my granddad used to come and sit on the end of my bed, but
wait, and you've got another scary story.
Yes. So it's not necessarily scary, but just like an interesting story, I thought. So let's get going. Just as I said, just bear with me because the font is really small in the book. So Richard's parents were discussing an event which had taken place several years before he was born. The 2.5-year-old boy was tinkering away on the floor with his toy cars and seemed fully absorbed in what he was doing, so much so that his parents almost forgot he was in the room. They had been talking about Richard's grandfather, who had died 9 months before Richard was born, and they were recalling the time when the old man had suffered a minor accident, that he had cut his hand when a chisel he had been working with had slipped under the weight of the hammer. Richard's grandfather had to go to the local hospital where he had 4 stitches put in his hand. The boy looked up from his toy cars and said, "My hand was sore that time." His mother Frances corrected him and said, "You mean your granddad's hand was sore?" Richard replied, "No, my hand, Mummy." Then he stretched out his hand and pointed to a spot between his thumb and forefinger and said, "It was just there and it was sore, but it's all better now." There was no mark or scar of any description on the child's hand, and he had pointed to the exact spot which corresponded with the injury received by his grandfather. Frances had never discussed her father's accident before, and she couldn't understand how Richard would have known the location of the injury. She says, "It wasn't as if my dad's accident had been a major catastrophe or anything like that, so there was never any real reason to mention it. It was just something that had happened to him during his lifetime. The only reason I'd been talking about it was that a friend of my husband's had hurt his hand the day before and had to have it stitched, and that reminded me about my father's similar experience." When Richard's father Len asked him how he knew which hand his grandfather had had stitches in, the little boy replied, "I know because it was my hand. I remember." "How could you remember?" asked his father. "You weren't even born when it happened." The child replied, "But I was born, Daddy, when I was living before." Frances and Len looked at each other and burst into laughter. They tried in vain to explain to their young son that it was impossible for him to remember his grandfather's accident, but no amount of talking could alter Richard's opinion. He assured them that he was the one who hurt his left hand with the hammer and the other big thing when he was there before. A few months after this incident, the family moved from Surrey to Northampton, which was an entirely new area and one to which little Richard had never been to before in his life. 2 days after they arrived in their new home, Richard asked his mother, "Can we go to York Road today, Mummy?" His mother asked him, "Where on earth is York Road?" She was still finding her bearings in the new town. Richard replied, "You know, York Road, where we went when I was living before." Frances told him, "You've never been to such a place." Then, determined to put the end to Richard's stories about having lived here before, she took her son out to show him that it was all just a figment of his imagination. They went down the road, and Frances asked the first person they met for directions to York Road, expecting to be told that the person had never heard of such a place. To her amazement, the stranger started giving her clear directions on how to get to a place that Frances was sure didn't exist. When they left the stranger, little Richard turned to his mother and said, "Why did you ask that man, Mummy? I know how to get there." By this time, Frances was so bewildered that she just let Richard lead her along the road to see what would happen. The child did not follow the instructions his mother had been given. However, so fearing that they might get lost in a new town, Frances remarked to Richard that she thought he might be taking the wrong route. The directions dictated that they should turn right at the certain set of traffic lights, but Richard had turned left instead. "It's okay, Mummy," said Richard confidently. "This is a shortcut." A few minutes later, to the astonishment of Frances, they stood looking up at the road sign, York Road. "Well, where do you want to go in York Road?" asked Frances. Her son told her that he wanted to see the old shop again where he used to buy his cigarettes. We wandered up and down the road for several times, says Frances, but Richard never found his shop. He hesitated at 2 or 3 spots when they seemed to rule them out for some reason, saying that they weren't the same. Years before Frances' father got married, he used to live and work in Northampton. Frances feels there must have been some link between her son, her father, and York Road, although she cannot recall her father ever having connections with that particular area. At least he never mentioned the place to me, she says, but of course he could have easily known the area in his younger days when he lived in the town before. He was a builder and was sent all over the place on various jobs, so that could explain it. Some of the York Road area of Northampton had been changed throughout the years, so that could explain why Richard didn't recognise his shop. Richard told his mother that he knew a big red pub that he used to go to when he was living before, and it was somewhere on a hill going up towards a park, and it was 2 roads away from where he used to live. Frances is not entirely sure the location of the pub on the hill that Richard referred to, but she is under the impression that when her little boy mentioned this, he was not thinking of York Road, but a different area of Northampton. When Richard was tiny, he was very attached to his home, and he would get most upset if his parents took him away for the weekend, or on a day visit anywhere. As his mother says, he would be miserable, unsettled, and a thorough nuisance. However, when he was taken to visit Frances' stepmother, he was perfectly happy and contented and was as good as gold. Most children love visiting their grandparents, but Frances' stepmother was not Richard's grandmother. Frances said, "Although Richard does not look like my father, he has the same mannerisms and personality. It sounds a bit silly, but I really feel that my father's spirit lives in Richard. My father died in January, and Richard was born in the following February. He has the same way of expressing himself, and he likes things that my father used to like. Richard is continually making statements about when he used to live before, and many of them correspond with the events that took place in the life of his grandfather. Len, his father, says he is always so definite about the things that he remembers. It's not as if he has hazy recollections about things. He seems to remember everything so distinctly. Len is entirely and utterly convinced that his little boy has lived before. I'd stake my life on it, he says. There's a lot of things that seem strange to us, but that doesn't mean they don't happen. I personally believe that we do come back again for a number of reasons, although I can't pretend to know the ins and outs of it. After listening to Richard, I feel sure that it happens. Richard informed his parents, "I'm not frightened of dying because when it happened before, it was okay." His mother says whenever he recalls an incident or if he relates to a story to us, he always phrases it in the same way. He will say this or that thing happened to him when he was living before, not when he was alive before or when he was here before. But quite definitely when he was living before. It's beyond me. I can't make head or tail of it. I've heard odd things like this before, but I never thought this would happen to my own family. So there we go, little creepy Richard.
Every time you said Little Richard, I just couldn't get the rock and roll singer out my head.
I mean, I read it as the book is, and like you have to think that book was written in 1983.
Yeah, he was still about then. He was in the 50s.
Oh
wasn't he?
yeah, of course.
Little Richard.
But yeah, so I mean, it's a very interesting book if you like that kind of thing. A random book.
Goes completely against the ghost ethos that we're a ghost and go off to heaven.
Yeah, so, it does. Yeah.
Who knows?
There's nothing to say though that there's only one type of ghost.
Maybe once you've gone through all of the 10,
it's like
you
met the unicorns.
You met the unicorns. you come back Larson. You come back into some other.
But there's nothing to say that there's one particular type of ghost.
That's true. There
could be many.
Yeah.
And also, we're not saying that the little boy is a ghost. There's no ghosts in that story, I suppose. It's just that his spirit or the essence of his grandfather lives on within him, but he remembers living before. Very strange.
You do. I prefer those stories to because you do hear people say that, and they're always like, "Oh, it was Napoleon." And it's like somebody's lying here, you know.
Yeah. But there was other stories in that book. Again, I would definitely recommend it. I think it's like £5 on Amazon. Like if you've got £5 to spare and you fancy like something like that, I would definitely recommend it.
What was it called again? Sorry.
The Children That Time Forgot.
Okay.
Probably get it on eBay as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's worth a read. There's other things like where a child remembers living in a similar place and recollects really terribly when they got hit by a train. There's like all sorts of different stories like that. I think there's about 10 or 15 stories that are similar to that kind of explore it, and obviously this couple have researched it and spoken to the families, so it's sort of first-hand accounts, but something a bit different. Thanks for listening. We love to hear what you think, and if you'd like to keep up to date with when new episodes of the podcast are released, you can follow us on our Instagram and our Facebook profile. Just search Haunting Button House. You can also get in touch via email at hauntingbuttonhouse@outlook.com. Saw it as the National Lottery. Reminded me to do my ticket.
Oh, yeah. You never know.
Were you recording then?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.